Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome back to F1 in Focus. We are the only Formula One podcast where a Dutchie and an Englishman can very much do get along in the world of Formula One, while having some civil discussions, race recaps, and discussing racing food and beverages. On today's show number 2, we'll discuss Audi joining Formula One in 2026, Daniel Ricciardo confirming the end of his McLaren era, and of course we talk about Spa. My name is John, and joining me is the man with the best hair in the business. It's none other than James Hazel. Hey James.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Good.
My predictions were a bit off, but we'll talk about Spa in a moment.
Yeah, same.
I have to do something though before we start talking about news, and so we were very right about all the penalties that we expected to be taken this weekekend.
Yeah, I think there ended up being more penalties than we thought. It was a bit crazy. Qualifying didn't seem to finish for about another hour while everyone figured out where everyone was.
Yeah, which was insane, right?
Yeah.
But as expected, I think we'll be having no more penalties for a little while. Monza probably, Perez taking the penalties there, I think.
Yeah.
And Sainz.
Maybe, yeah.
But for now, it's all right. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
How was the first show for you? Because that was your first official podcast, right?
First time I've ever done a podcast. Yeah, I was a little bit nervous, I think. I maybe should. I don't know. But I'm sure I'll settle into it as we do more of these.
I'm pretty sure you will. It was great, man. And if you're listening and viewing this show, of course, thank you so much for your support, checking us out, giving us those reviews and those thumbs up. Very much appreciated, and we can only go upwards from here. So, James, we had a little bit delay pushing out our first show.
Yeah.
Shall we just confirm why that was?
Can do if you want, yeah.
So we named the show. Because I have also other podcasts, and we wanted to stay in the same branding of podcast. So we made everything, made the finished editing, we uploaded it all, did a test run, all good. And then I was actually wanted to listen back to it, and I realized there was also another show whose name was exactly the same. Which although we're legally we could, but that doesn't feel right. These guys worked hard on their show, so let's rename it. And it actually took us another day to make new logos and stuff and pick it all up, changing all the names on Spotify and stuff as well. So we were a little bit late with our release of the podcast, which meant we pushed it out on Thursday. And, of course, the first topic we opened up was silly season, which was all about Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel mostly, and Piastri, of course. And the first news that actually came out when everyone arrived at Spa this Wednesday was... So this was before we released the show. Daniel Ricciardo actually has been, was not getting a new contract and actually been bought out of his contract for next year. So this is actually the last 8 races left for Daniel Ricciardo in Formula One, unless someone picks him up, James. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. We kind of expected it to happen, didn't we? I think during the last podcast we kept saying that if it plays out the way it looks like it's going to play out and stuff like that. So it basically has done. Still a little bit gutted for Ricciardo, to be honest, because I'd like to see him stay in Formula One, but it's clearly not working at McLaren, and even at this latest race, it kind of proves that, I mean, McLaren maybe weren't entirely on the ball anyway in Spa, but he still didn't really perform as well as he should do in that car, so...
That's the biggest issue, right? I really like the guy we spoke about last week.
Yeah. It's,
of course, a terrific guy. When he was at Red Bull, the team with Max was amazing. And they really hyped each other up, and they went at each other on a good way. Once in a not so good way, but they made each other better, I think. And
they were definitely pushing each other, yeah. I think the way it seems to me is that I think Ricciardo moving up to Red Bull, being alongside Vettel, beating Vettel in 2014, he probably was expecting to be the top dog of the team. And then Max kind of got fast-tracked part of the way through 2015, didn't he? Was it 2015? I think it was, wasn't it? When they swapped him and Kvyat around. and Max just kind of proved that he was already at that level to be in the top team. And
I think the first season they were about equal, but the second season was already clear that at least in qualifying and in race.
I think that probably unsettled Ricciardo a bit, didn't it? And then from there, I think you can understand his struggles to some extent, because really all he's done is taken a step back from being in like one of the top teams in the sport to dropping down to what was Renault, now Alpine. And then obviously McLaren was hopefully going to be a good move, but hasn't worked out for him. So I think I really want to see him get just that second chance, because I think he could be doing better than he currently is. But I'm beginning to think now, as much as I would hate to see him leave the grid, that he might not get a seat next year.
Yeah, I think it's not the same Daniel anymore.
No.
A big part of professional sports is, of course, not your enthusiasm or your will to win, but also your confidence.
Confidence.
You can fake a lot of confidence, but form and confidence are very tightly connected.
Yeah.
And as you can see with Max, he's just flying around. He's oozing confidence, being patient on stuff, and just chilling. While there's so much pressure on him. You see with Leclerc, he's fast enough, but you see with him, the pressure sort of takes a toll, and he makes one mistake, makes a second mistake, and goes from there.
Definitely.
Daniel has been making mistake after mistake after mistake, and it's really hard to get out of that rut.
Yeah.
And why would a team risk getting him on? Although I would really hate to see him go. But which team could pick him up and just actually have a better... Because they still have to deal with that issue first, then, right?
Yeah.
He's not suddenly coming into the team being confident.
No, I think really the only option he's got that I can see is a 1-year contract at Alpine, and they just review him over a year, and they kind of do what Red Bull are doing with Perez. Give him a go, and if he doesn't perform, they're not tied down to him. But does Alpine want to take him is the real question, because he's just not quite performing how he should be doing, and there's no excuse this year, certainly, because like we kind of covered last week, that his first year at McLaren there was a lot of talk of him like struggling with the car, but you can't use that as an excuse this year, because everyone's got to adapt to these new regulations. So that should have really put him at a level playing field with Norris, and when it has now, that if it has, Norris is still quite handily beating him. So
yeah, you've seen today. Like we'll talk about the race shortly.
Yeah,
but I don't want to explicitly name Daniel, I think, in it. But you see today that he, like Norris, started with a lot of penalties. I think 8 places behind him, 7 places behind him, something like that. But Norris still outperformed him today again.
Yep.
And I think that must suck. He's, I think in the standings, he was 15 today.
Ricciardo, yeah. Norris was 12th or 11th, wasn't he? I can't remember exactly where he finished in the end. He was kind of tied in that little DRS train behind Albon, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, that's of course difficult, but like Norris wasn't.
Well, yeah, but the point is that
Norris started 17th.
Yeah, he's still.
Well, Daniel started 7th.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if we look at the end results, so that's 7th for Daniel and 17th from Norris. And we'll look at the results today. We see Norris on 12.
Yeah.
So that's plus 5. And we see Daniel on 15. So that's minus 8.
Yeah. Not a good look.
Yikes. That's not good for your confidence. And this was one of those races where he had to show himself as well.
Yeah. Didn't seem to be a reason for it either. I didn't notice anything in the race in particular that, like, any kind of mistakes from Ricciardo or getting tied up in anyone else's mistakes or pit stop errors or anything like that, or strategy errors. He just seemed to be slow to me. I don't know if you caught anything, but...
No, so I watched a couple of the onboards, and it's like doing all right. But I think the biggest fact, he got a little bit unlucky while being stuck behind Albon. While Norris, I think, pitted along with him, which made it a bit easier.
Yeah.
Still didn't pass Albon, though. So There's that. But yeah, I don't think it's anything specific. I think what he needs is an extraordinary race to get some confidence back. But on the other side, last year he won Monza, right?
Yeah.
And that didn't help either after that. So
no.
Maybe we should just say, you know what, it's harsh, but it is okay, it's done. Well, if you look at Sebastian Vettel, who already announced his retirement, of course, actually did perform really well over the weekend.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So
yeah, it is harsh on Ricciardo, but last week I was really hoping he'd get a seat, but I think this weekend just kind of not really nailing the coffin exactly, but just kind of reasserts that they made the right decision.
Yeah. Let him see wins on for next week, though, with us saying that.
Yeah. Although based on how Alpine did and how McLaren did this weekend, maybe not the best decision for Piastri.
Yeah, that's the other thing, though. If you look at the race, of course, Alpine, they just came 5th and 7th today.
Yeah.
So they actually, I'm pretty sure, but I'm actually checking now, but I'm pretty sure they surpassed McLaren now. Yeah, so they're now 4th with 115 points. Yeah. You got a 20-point lead over McLaren currently. So Piastri, well done. You sent for the wrong team, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is what Ricciardo needs. If Ricciardo does get that Alpine seat, maybe this is what he needs, moving to a more consistent team. Because McLaren have been a little bit up and down. We were talking last week about them being the 4th fastest car in the grid, which they probably, for the most part, are. But
as long as the track isn't.
Yeah, they seem to be almost like Mercedes, but on a slightly less extreme scale. In that, they had some struggles at the start of the season, which I think was to do with parts on the car, which they replaced fairly quickly, which seemed to pull them up the grid a little bit. But the car does seem to be a little bit hit and miss compared to some of the other teams that are reasonably consistent. Alpine's a prime example of that. We talked about Ocon last week and how his results are not great, but they're consistently not great, if that makes sense. Like he's always finishing in the same sort of spot. Although
this weekend, Ocon did really well.
Some amazing overtakes from him this weekend.
we were watching, and he did 2 double overtakes in Spa.
Yeah.
Pretty insane, actually.
Yeah.
So
into the final chicane, and then it was at the end of the back straight, wasn't it?
Insanely overtakes, and he oozed confidence, I think. So well done, Ocon, I have to say. He can't become driver of the day. He didn't become driver today, but he might as well have been for all our characters.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about this shortly, because we did have some other news, though. On Friday, they started with, hey, it's time for the new Formula 1. So the summer break is over. Here's some news. We have a new engine supplier coming in the Formula 1, James.
Amazing. I think this is some of the best news Formula 1's had in a little while, I think. I was a little bit worried for a couple of years, really, about engine supplies and stuff, especially with how, if you look at Honda during its McLaren days, and then
Renault not finding any teams.
It looked like Formula 1 was going to hit a point where they're actually going to struggle to attract new manufacturers into the sport. But then, I don't know the ins and outs of these engine rule changes that they're bringing in 2026. But we've got Audi joining, and Porsche probably.
I think we can probably safely announce that.
Porsche is all but confirmed, aren't they? I don't know if they're coming in as a brand new engine. They're potentially going to buy the Red Bull powertrain thing, which is basically Honda. So how
it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this in any kind of motorsport where maybe it has happened before, I don't know, and I'm just not aware of it, but effectively an IP from one manufacturer becoming the IP of another manufacturer, especially when it's through a third party like Red Bull. That's
although it's a completely new engine in 26.
So
they have to start developing it now. They can just
but they
use what Red Bull make the factory.
But yeah, they can piggyback off Red Bull's knowledge, which is effectively Honda's knowledge. So that's really, really good.
They did it with an excellent presentation of a cool looking car. Which says we're actually going to have a team as well.
Well, the team I don't think is going to be a new team, is it? They're just going to buy into a team, much like Mercedes did when they bought Braun.
Yeah.
And it looks all but a done deal that it's going to be Sauber.
Well, I think there were 99% of all Formula One fans and everyone working in the paddock were happy about this and found it completely cool news that Audi joins. There was just one party that I think an hour after the announcement announced something themselves and sort of peed over this announcement from Audi, being a bit sour. And that was Alfa Romeo saying, hey, by the way, after 23, we're going to step away from Formula One.
Yeah.
So I think, although it's not officially confirmed yet, the rumors are that 75% of Sauber is going to be Alfa Romeo. But
some of the almost suggestive tweets on Twitter from Audi, it does seem like Sauber's the way they're going to go. But it depends exactly what the plan is and how quickly they want to move, because they're definitely not going to have an engine until 2026 with the new rules, but Sauber are going to be free of Alfa Romeo from... It's 2023 is the final year, isn't it?
Yeah, so 24 is going to be a Sauber dash something.
So 24-25, Sauber are no longer Alfa Romeo, potentially being in the process of having shares or whatever bought by Audi. But who's their engine supplier during that time? Is it going to remain Ferrari? So you're going to have like a Ferrari-powered Sauber
car
with a small stake owned by Audi. I don't know. It's
not much different than Haas, maybe, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
it's still Haas Ferrari. So I think that could be. I think if you're at Sauber, you have potential to become a pretty cool factory team, of course, with Audi jumping on.
Yeah.
But there's a potential that if you're driving for them in 24 and 25, you might not have the best years of your life.
Yeah, and you might not have a guaranteed seat for 26 if Audi want to, they want to take the lead on who their drivers are going to be.
Yeah, and they're very much already. The first message they put out there is the first time in a decade we're going to build Formula One engines actually in Germany. Like, hello, Mercedes. How you doing?
Just throwing some shade like that. Yeah,
your factory's in England, right? Yeah, well. Yeah. So they already know how to stir the pot, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was a pretty neat move. But I think the car presentation itself was pretty cool. Of course, we don't know anything about the car in 26 yet, or not anything crucial yet. But like the way they presented it, honestly, I do think that they have to learn to be in the spotlight a bit more, because some of these press conferences I have to admit, I forgot the name of the Audi director, but some of these press conferences were a little bit awkward still. But then again, he probably has 4 years to practice for that.
Yeah.
And they stated that they are now starting to build everything. The facility is already being built. But we shouldn't expect big things when they just start out in 26, because they have to hire and learn all the way through there. So
yeah,
I think their aim was to be competitive at the end of 29. So it's still a long way to go. But nevertheless, cool option. I think if you're Porsche, you love this. If you step onto Red Bull, you might have a competitive car way faster. So,
yeah, definitely.
But it's good. It's good for the sport. There you see that not only the technical directives work or the technical setup for the season works, but I think also the budget cap definitely allows parties like Audi and Porsche to jump.
Yeah, that's definitely played a part, hasn't it, in attracting these manufacturers in, because they're not going to feel like they're
burning money.
Yeah, and that they're so far behind other teams, because so the other teams have got knowledge at the moment, but you can potentially, well, not strictly steal it, because if you can poach engineers and stuff, can't you? And they can't help but bring some knowledge with them, even if there's like non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that, or they get put on gardening leave, which is a very common thing in Formula One.
I asked them people at Austin that came from Red Bull. Yeah,
well, it's same for some of the Mercedes.
Red Bull engineers came from Mercedes now.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that's going to be interesting. Actually, is that really it feels like there's only so many engineers and so much staff to go around in Formula One, and now you've got an entire new manufacturer that's going to be wanting to poach some of those. And how appealing is it going to be for people to go to a manufacturer like Audi and hope that they get on that kind of I'm trying to think of the right word for it, that kind of like dream story sort of setup where you join a new manufacturer and they just come in and they just maybe not cakewalk it, but they come in and do really well and like massively surpass expectation. And
if there's 1 year of doing it, I think it's 26, right? So, although I don't think they'll fly right away, but I think the new era of Formula One is the era where you can step in, take your time, and be good at what you do the right things right, and then you'll be able to compete. Yeah. And I think that shows now in a couple of teams. Like you see Haas now performing way better than they did before, right? Actually, Alpha, talking about Alpha, so they're doing all right now. So
yeah, they've kind of tailed off, actually. Didn't they? Yeah, Williams. Wow, they've got racing pedigree, haven't they? Like to me, it seems wrong seeing Williams still associated with being a team at the back.
Yeah,
if you think about the 90s, like even the early 2000s, they just shouldn't be where they are, but they are. So,
I think that definitely shows that if you don't have your own engine behind you, you won't be able to be competitive anymore.
Yeah, I certainly don't.
Red Bull showed that when the years where they were, with the Renault years, and I think all the other teams now show it. Alpine is now number 4. They've got their own supplier, their own engines, and you see them McLaren falling a bit back. Aston not taking that leap. Alfa Romeo not able to take that. Haas and piggybacking off Ferrari. I think it's for sure now that if you don't have a factory team, then you can do all right, but I honestly don't think you'll ever be able to. I don't
think you could ever be like a constructors champion.
The Cosworth days are over, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you need factory backing to be a top team and to fight for the Constructors' Championship, definitely.
And that's something Red Bull now gets,
or
has currently, or a bit. So, and you see this year that makes a whole lot of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think positive news, Audi in. Unfortunately, Daniel out, and doubt we'll be seeing him again. Are you ready to talk the race? Or Spa this weekend, though.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I got my Belgian beer. I said I was going to have.
I've got my Belgian Spa water actually to make it a little bit into this team. But yeah, cool. Free practice 1 fell short. Started with we had a crash, but I forgot who it was honestly. We had a rain after that, so that felt a bit flat. Free practice 2, the Red Bulls were flying, which was like weird because this was the weekend where the floor directives we spoke about last week, all the changes are now made. But the Bulls were the ones that looked the best, wondrous enough.
Just all weekend, really. Red Bull have just been on another level this weekend. I mean, hats off to them, really. I don't. Ferrari, to be fair, actually, Ferrari didn't really bring any upgrades, did they? They brought a rear wing and
the floor, though.
The strut or something for the rear wing was. I think it was those 2 parts, wasn't it? Were different or upgrades. For Red Bull,
they had to change the floor, of course, a lot.
Yeah. Well, they've had to change it for the rules, but they didn't fetch like a brand new floor. It wasn't like a new part. Because obviously these things have to be declared now, and that all gets released as like a press release, doesn't it, on a Friday? Like it
was a big one this weekend.
No, it wasn't for Ferrari. Red Bull brought some parts, didn't they? I can't remember what they brought. They brought some parts related to the floor, though. Mercedes were one of the teams to bring like more parts than most of the others. I think might have been AlphaTauri had quite a lot. I'm trying to remember. There was another team that had as many new parts, if not more, than Mercedes. Could have been Williams, yeah. But
anyways,
Red Bull, whatever they've done,
Red Bull was flying.
Whatever they've done, yeah.
Didn't matter if it was a little bit wet or sunny. The only thing was it was really cool, so the temperature weren't up there. Yeah, we had a steadily 17 degrees Celsius, I think, over the Friday and Saturday mostly.
Yeah,
we ended on 15 degrees on qualifying, and there was one car one team that was supposed to be causing mayhem.
Havoc was the word.
Havoc. They were bringing havoc this weekend, but they didn't actually bring anything. What's up with Mercedes?
I did say. I'm pretty sure I said something last week, and I definitely said to you, like, I don't take stock in any of this, like, just crap that they put out. I mean,
why? Just explain me why.
Why? Because 9 times out of 10, they don't back it up. They come in swinging with words, but then when they actually get the car on the track, it very rarely pans out. And I mean, look at it's Barcelona, wasn't it, where they did really well considering, or compared to previous races, and all we heard from Mercedes was, "Oh, we've got this car tamed or whatever. We've got it under control now. We think we figured out what the problems are." And then the very next race, they were just nowhere again, saying, we don't know where we are with it. We don't know what car we're getting every race. If we the car seems to be different." And so when they start saying stuff like that on a Thursday and a Friday morning before any kind of practice, I don't take any of it.
Why would you say it, James? This is the part I don't get. So
I don't get it either.
Mercedes is a team that's been complaining about the flex floor, and you name it, they've all been setting the precedent to change the rules, right?
Right.
Safety, dampening, height in the cars, the whole shebang. Lewis comes in on a Thursday. We could talk about shortly on what he was actually wearing, by the way.
Let's not cover that. I don't want to start getting into the whole fashion thing that some people do.
But anyways, I wouldn't be able to wear it, honestly. So kudos to him. But first thing he says, we're about to bring havoc in the new season.
Yeah.
When after the summer
second
break,
half, yeah.
Russell says, we're pretty sure the new changes will definitely help us. I can't wait to fight at the top. With the penalties being taken, we might actually get a win in.
I don't know why they say it, but then, they were purposefully playing it the other way last year and just constantly getting stick for it when they were like, "Oh, we don't think we're going to be able to fight at this race or at that race, or we think we've got problems with the car," and stuff like that. And then, why
won't you just say, okay, we know the changes, they look in our advantage, but we have no clue yet before.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nobody would mind if you just say it like this, right?
I don't know.
But now you're chasing away half the people. If you don't do well, they will say, "Haha, there you go." And if you do well, there's half people that's going to get stick to the other guys.
And they're just setting themselves up for a fall. And more often than not, they do fall because they say stuff that they don't end up being able to back up. And I don't know how much of this is about like maybe team morale going into a weekend, or trying to keep the manufacturer and like board members pleased or stuff like that. Whether because they can't be entirely negative, I guess, but rather than being like that sure of themselves and that positive when they don't know that they're going to be able to back it up, just don't really say anything and just play it coy. Like, just wait until you get on
we don't
track.
know yet. We haven't driven a single mile.
Exactly.
So we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing is, though, we had six drivers taking penalties, including Max and Leclerc.
Yep.
We went into qualifying. And yes, I know I'm a Max Verstappen fan, but Max showed boss mode on qualifying, right? He did. Q1, Q2 with the same tires.
Yeah, and then one lap for Q3.
Yeah.
Does that count as pole? I can't remember how it works.
Yeah, it did count as pole. Yeah.
It does count as pole, yeah, because it's the time set before the penalties, isn't it?
But he was 1.8 seconds faster than Lewis on a single lap.
Yeah.
Whereas even Lewis was like, what, 1.8 seconds? Yeah, it was 1.8 seconds.
Yeah.
And he, like, Max drove, went out, set that time, came back in the garage, stepped out.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm done today.
And I mean, he didn't need to go out and set another lap, did he? Because like, really all he was focusing on was qualifying ahead of the other people that were taking penalties, including Leclerc. Yeah.
He was only watching Leclerc, honestly, right?
Yeah. And it was pretty clear that even if Sainz or Perez could have got anywhere close to his time, it didn't seem likely that Leclerc was going to. That gap was pretty substantial, I think.
Max had a 43.6 in Q3. Sainz had a 44.2.
Yeah.
And there's Perez 44.4. So that's 6 and 8 tenths difference from the rest.
That's insane. Just an unbelievable.
What happened to the car? They didn't bring the upgrades, James.
Who? Red Bull?
Like Red Bull.
And they did bring some upgrades.
Yeah, but it's not like it's...
Well, they haven't brought this new chassis that keeps being mentioned, apparently.
And that's going to be in Singapore. I hope this was a new chassis already. Because else, what's he going to do? Drive 2.8 seconds faster than the rest?
I'd be questioning why you bother changing the chassis based on this weekend. I mean, even looking at what Perez did in the race, like, Perez was nowhere near Max Verstappen's pace, obviously, but he was still clearly the second fastest car on the track today. Although how much of that is down to the track as well? I mean, potentially maybe this directive has affected Ferrari. I think
a little bit harder than the rest, maybe.
Yeah, I think there were concerns. I don't know if it's just among fans and among pundits, but even potentially Ferrari. I think there was a concern that it was going to affect them more than it was going to affect Red Bull. Maybe this weekend proves it, but really it's a sample size of one, so it doesn't really prove anything to me.
And it's a track that usually does well for the high speed. Like Red Bull says already, this would be one of those tracks. It's Max's favorite track, right?
Yeah.
He did a 24 hours endurance race, I think, on a sim a week or two ago, where he started off in the 50th place and ended up in, I think, 9 or 7. I think 9.
Wow. Yeah.
So he knows this track blindfolded, I think.
Yeah.
And that shit really shows. But there was a gap on qualifying, which I haven't seen for a while.
Yeah, we haven't seen that since, pretty strong Mercedes domination, I think.
That's insane. And the thing is, I don't think anyone expected it, which is the biggest difference. Like Leclerc out of 44.5 as well, so he's a bit off Sainz, right? Like
I don't know what was happening with Leclerc this weekend. Even before we get into the actual race, like he didn't. I don't know if it's the pressure getting to him, or maybe it is the change to the car that's, maybe he's struggling with it a bit more than Sainz. I was pretty sure that Leclerc was going to come back from the summer break.
You predicted him winning.
I predicted him winning. Yeah. Yeah. That didn't pan out, did it? I honestly thought, well, this was part of me predicting him winning, I thought he was going to come back from the summer break refreshed and extremely motivated, just because of how the end of the first half of the season kind of went for him.
And I remember you saying maybe they spoke about Ferrari and they don't do silly things. And you say, what am I kidding? They will probably do silly things.
Oh, yeah.
And then Saturday, only qualifying in Q3. So he knew he would start at the back, right? Or far way back.
Yeah.
And he knew Max was faster. So he actually had no reason to. He had to put in a time, but he was pretty clear. He just stands 1 point behind Max. And they fitted him with fresh softs.
Brand new soft tyres. For
the second tier. For the second lap.
No, it was for his first lap, wasn't it? It was when he was supposed to go out and give a tour to Sainz. At least that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, you're correct, yeah. And they tossed.
And then they were like, oh, yeah, okay, set your lap. Basically, because you've got the brand new tyres on, you should just set your lap now. And the only reason he went out to do the second lap was to give Sainz the tour, which didn't end up working. I didn't look at the sector times for that, actually. I don't know if...
Well, Sainz was faster, so he's high top speed. He had the highest top speed of the whole day.
But his second lap was significantly slower than his first lap, and I don't know if he
messed up in sector 2.
Oh, yeah, he did. Was there a lockup or something, wasn't there?
Yeah. So the first sector, actually, the tow I think helped a lot.
Yeah, I remember now.
So he did well there, but it was pretty. I should just get the Ferrari radio on. It's hilarious at times, and I thought maybe after the summer break it's done now, right? They made some agreements, but actually Leclerc drove out of the pits like, "Hey guys, what's actually up with these fresh tires?" And they said something like, "That's a mistake."
Yeah.
Plainly just, oops, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I've been asking around, like, how does this get called, right? Who decides which set of tires goes on the car? But it's actually the race engineer from Leclerc that's actually just say, okay, I want number 17 on the car, the next, set number 17 on the car, for example.
Right.
So his race engineer clearly made this error.
So he called the tyres, maybe in his notes he thought that was a scrubbed set rather than a brand new set, and he's just screwed up that way. But
the call was
never seen that kind of.
It's not like the radio does or the pit wall does it. No, it's the race engineer that actually puts calls those tires out. So
never seen that kind of mistake before either that I can think of. Anyway,
I think Albon had one this year during training or qualifying where they put a wrong set tires on.
Right.
But they wrote it down correctly, but they put it on a different set, something like that.
Okay.
It was already used. So it was already right off. But he got a warning and a little fine for it, I think, something like that.
Right.
But this was a weird one, yeah. But it was like,
where it's just,
we were watching qualifying, we're like, okay, well, never mind what we said about Ferrari this year.
It's such bad timing as well because, the pressure's on. They need to be, performing to perfection. And then they make a mistake like that, which I don't know how much that really cost Leclerc in the end, to be honest.
Not too much, but at least you don't have the option anymore.
No, at the most it cost him one position, didn't it? But even then, I don't think it cost him a position because that's assuming that on those brand new tyres on his second flying lap, which, the track might have been rubbered in a tiny bit more. I don't know how much difference that really makes during a single, especially Q3, where there's fewer cars out, putting rubber down. I don't think he was ever going to qualify above Verstappen, is what I'm kind of getting at here.
No, nobody. I think this weekend nobody touched Max.
So it was a silly mistake, but ultimately I don't think it really cost him anything.
But we're not done yet, though.
No, because there was something else that really did cost him.
Yeah, so jump into race day. I made some notes though, right?
Okay, so, good.
Max started 14th. Actually, started 15th, but Gasly, Yuki and Gasly actually both had to start from the pit lane, both electrical troubles, I think.
Yes.
So that was also interesting. So that cleared the way a little bit for Max and Charles.
Yeah, he started from his normal grid slot, didn't he? But
but the cars in front will go.
He's effectively a position or two.
So he started officially. Now, Yuki stepped out earlier, so that's why they stepped up. So
but then when Gasly moved into the pits,
just left an empty space.
It just left an empty grid slot, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So Jochen Gasly out. Max after lap 1, which was a really interesting one. Max is already in P8.
Amazing opening lap. And very, I want to say reserved, but not reserved because he moved up to P8. But he was
very smart, very patient.
Yeah, he was playing the long game.
Except once.
This season, really, I think winning the championship last year has just like unlocked God mode Max Verstappen effectively, because he hasn't really got anything to prove now. He's gone out, he's won a championship, a tight fought championship against like one of the greatest drivers of all time at this point. I don't know how anyone could really dispute that when you look at like Hamilton's number of wins and podiums and his ratio of races to podiums and stuff like that. And Max going out and beating him that last year,
winning 10 races.
It just feels like this season is a different Max Verstappen.
He's very chilled as well. So he
I think the fact
Max, do you think you can make it to the podium? I would be very disappointed if I don't make the podium.
I think the fact that this season is not. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Max isn't into all of the dramas. He doesn't like the Netflix stuff. Like, he just wants to turn up to a race weekend and drive the car. He's not interested in any of the other stuff, really. And I think all the drama that surrounded last year with the run-ins between him and Lewis, the constant bickering between Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. I think having none of that really this year is also actually playing massively into Max's hands, because I think this is exactly how he likes to race. It's like no drama, it's just focus on the racing. Yeah. And yeah, he does seem to be quite disappointed at times and genuinely seems to, offer a bit of support to Leclerc when you see him after the races sometimes, and he's going over to Leclerc and asking, what happened? And Leclerc's often having to say, my strategist didn't have a strategy. And he's
wrong
like,
tires.
And Max genuinely seems frustrated for Leclerc in that. I think because Max really would prefer to have a bit of a fight, which he's not really getting at the moment. But yeah,
if the pace is like this today, if this is the setup for the rest of the season, doesn't matter how good the strategy is at Ferrari.
It's over.
Done deal, right?
I mean, Max only has to finish third every race. I say only.
93-point lead now.
Yeah, he only has to finish third for the remaining races to win the championship. And there's no way he's going to average finishing third when he is the top driver in what seems to now be the top team, because I think Red Bull have won the development war against Ferrari.
Also strategy, always on par. No silly calls. There's no panic mode there. It's
but Red Bull have so much experience.
My shift starts
well.
slow. But he said, for example, I have trouble with shifts. I think it's slow. It reacts slow.
Yeah.
They came back. Max, it will be back within 2 laps. Just relax. Okay, check. That's it. Yeah. No panic mode. Okay. And I think that shows how much confidence and how well-oiled machine it is. Also, the pit stop is 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.42.
Yeah, that second stop of Max Verstappen's was insane as well. That's borderline the sort of times they were setting last year before they introduced these rules to slow them down. And when you think about it as well, like everything about a pit stop should, in theory, be a little bit slower this year because of like the big heavier tires and wheels. And then they still set a 2.2 second pit stop when they have absolutely no reason to be going that fast. Like, you take your time. I mean, I don't know if you remember, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago now. Mercedes were like consistently like half a second slower than everyone else with their pit stops because they didn't need to be fast. They weren't racing anyone in the pit stops. So it was like, take our time, make sure all the wheel nuts are on. There's no wheels coming off or anything down the. Everything's safe. Everything's fine. We're not in a race with anybody via the pit stops. Red Bull really could have and maybe should have done that, but I say should have. It doesn't matter because they did a 2.2 second pit stop and they had no problems with it. But they're just, like you said, well-oiled machine is.
Yeah, from communication to teamwork, Perez moving over and like.
Perez took his time a little bit.
The first one.
He should have moved over a lap sooner. I think he was. Max
let him no chance to actually try it again in the next one.
Yeah, Max sat behind him for a lap, and then got on the radio and was like, "This is costing us a lot of time." And then there was a pretty well orchestrated.
So
let off the throttle a little bit down the straight. Yeah.
Lap number 3, James. We got to rush through this now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Lap number 3, we got a safety car because of 2 incidents in the same lap. But it started out with Fernando and Lewis.
Yeah.
And Lewis making one of the few mistakes I've seen.
Yeah, that was a stupid error by Lewis, really. You don't just assume that the driver on the inside is not there anymore. He said that Alonso was in his blind spot, so
he knew it was there. He went to the outside, so he know the car's there.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen the interview, but
if you pass on the outside, you've got to assume that the car on the inside is still going to be, especially when you're that close together going into the braking zone. You've got to assume.
It's also Fernando.
Yeah, you've got to assume that the driver on the inside is going to late brake and just try to steam up the inside of you and probably try and push you wide for the exit and into the apex of the second corner, which is probably what Fernando was going to try and do anyway.
Didn't have to because there was no more space for Fernando.
No, Lewis just cutting across like that. He did not leave any space for a driver on the inside.
And what happens when you don't leave space? Lewis found out you actually go into space.
Yeah, that was quite a launch, yeah.
He said in an interview afterwards, I almost broke my back during that incident.
Did he? I didn't see that interview. I can imagine. You saw that how much they were suffering from the porpoising and how much it's like hitting on the floor and an impact like that. He was over 10 foot in the air, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
It looks cool on pictures, but I wouldn't want to be him, though.
Nah, I'm glad he walked away from it. Because joking aside, that could have been pretty bad for his back.
Yeah.
To the point where actually it flagged a sensor, didn't it? And he was supposed.
Yeah, the IG.
He should have gone. Himself. He should have gone to the medical center, and he refused and got some sort of warning.
All the way back.
Yeah.
And then in the same lap, though, after the incident, because it didn't actually cost a safety car just yet, we had Latifi spinning out, I think, next to Ocon. And Bottas wanted to avoid that incident. But everyone drove off except Bottas because he beat himself.
So unlucky for Valtteri, yeah. He did everything he could to avoid it, and he still just, that slight tap on his back wheel sent him out of control into the gravel and then just beached it. And
on his birthday.
Yeah, there's just no way he was going to save that.
Sounds good, going to the beach on your birthday, but I don't think this was his intended beach.
No, definitely not.
Safety car in. Also, someone else went in during the safety car. It was Charles Leclerc behind Max Verstappen on mediums. Everyone on softs, and why is he spitting? But we now found out what.
Yeah, I messaged you, didn't I? And I said, well, that's Leclerc's race over because he got on the radio and said something about his front tyres, like smoke from his front tyre, which we now know was probably his brakes overheating because his brake duct was blocked. We'll cover that in a sec. But just the timing of it, it's like everything that can go wrong for Leclerc is going wrong or has gone wrong. Like that happened after the pack. The pack wasn't exactly spread out anyway, but the pack was like fully bunched up at this point, and then he has to pit, and it sends him right to the back of the pack, which, he maybe would have been anyway thinking about it because, like I said, the pack wasn't really that spread out. But it was a lap into the safety car. He pits, comes out dead last, or maybe it was second to last because somebody else pitted, didn't they? Was it
Latifi probably?
Yeah.
Because he spun off. But yeah, it happened because of a tear-off. Went into his brake duct.
Yeah.
And we now found out whose tear-off that actually was.
Yeah.
It was Max's tear-off, which he tear off his helmet to get a little bit more sight. And we saw it on the replay that actually just flew straight into Leclerc's brake.
Yeah, Max said
a little bit like Mario Kart with the bananas.
I know. Max said in one of the interviews that he'd picked up a bit of dust or something in the first couple of laps and ripped a tear off to, help with his vision, obviously, and really hoped that it wasn't his tear off that went into Leclerc's brake duct. And
talk about unlucky.
Turns out it was. Yeah.
But there used to be a rule that you can't tear off your tear off. You can't tear it off unless you're in the pit lane, right? Or that you have to keep it in the car. But that rule's gone, I guess.
I don't remember that rule. I don't think they've been doing that. I don't think they've been doing that for a long time. Yeah, because for quite often, you sort of wonder, like, when they're just tossing it out of the cockpit the way that they do, like, what if that goes into, like, one of the intakes of the car? And it seems that they have to, like, quite purposefully point it out in a direction so that it would just drift down the side pods or across like the top of the side pods and into your opponent's brake duct. Apparently, it was less like a banana and more like using a red shell backwards.
It was like it was an official peel. There you go. You go on. Oh, I do feel a little bit for Charles, and he's not even done yet because his race didn't get much better from there on.
No.
Max fought his way all the way back from in lap 8 after the safety car went in. Max was already in P3.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a given going through the pack in some respects because all the other drivers, like, looking at how fast he's been all weekend. If you're like Ocon or Alonso with...
Alonso and I think Vettel, they were like, okay, I will move aside. Just go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
no point.
If you're Vettel as well, like any of those drivers
tried for second, but it was like his car stood still.
If you're basically anyone other than a Mercedes, just out of spite, and a Ferrari because you're actually fighting them,
out of spite,
like, you just don't fight them. Like, what is the point against the Red Bull? So, especially because he was on the soft tires and all those other cars were on medium tires, so. It's like, well, he's got the faster tire, he's got the faster car. I'm not racing him. Therefore, there's no point losing any time trying to defend against him. And actually, even Russell didn't really attempt
he didn't
to
move,
stop
but
him.
It's like when
it's like a
DRS was done.
Yeah, it's like a half-hearted, like, I'm going to cover the inside line, and Max is like, well, I don't need the inside line because I'm going to be 3 car lengths in front of you by the time we get to the braking zone, so it doesn't matter where I am on track. The only person who seemed to fight him overtaking him was Perez.
Yeah, once.
Yeah, once, yeah.
Because in lap 12, there was 1 second, Sainz was leading, 1 second behind him was Perez, between 1 second, 1.5. And Max was already a second behind Perez then.
Yeah.
Then they pulled in Sainz. They left Max surpass Perez. And honestly, game over. Max drove away. Of course, at space, we can go all through it. But he ended up winning the race with 2 fingers in his nose, I think, and then 17-second leave to his teammate.
And like both of his stints, he just seemed to massively prolong his stints compared to all the other drivers. I mean, he
5 laps more on soft than everyone else.
Yeah, he pitted after
the rest went for
a bunch of the medium cars, and he was on soft driving at that pace. Like, just unreal. There's an unbelievable drive and clearly a great car to match.
This was a really impressive, and actually, like, we expected, like, Leclerc and Max going into it all the way, cutting back and fighting till the end. But by lap 12, this race honestly was over, right? got a little bit exciting at the end. Maybe Russell could take on Sainz. But honestly, Sainz was just saving probably by the looks of it.
Everything that was supposed to be exciting about this race kind of panned out in the first 10 laps.
Yeah. Still saw some great action. Like I think Ocon was one of the big takes this one, and I have to give big applause to Albon, right? Getting a speed 10 in, starting at P6, of course, with all the penalties.
Yeah.
And that Williams is a rocket ship on the straight, even with TRS and everything enabled. Nobody could surpass him on the straights. Yeah. He was just stalling time until he got on the straight, and the whole train behind him couldn't catch up before the end.
Yeah. Fernando had a really good drive as well, to be fair.
Yeah, but he started well as well. Of course, he started fourth. He ended up being fifth.
Yeah.
Right. And Ocon ended up being seventh. So I think Alpine did really well. Like Ocon, Fernando, more people though, because Vettel ended up in P8. I have to applaud Gasly as well. I keep forgetting him, but he started in the pit lane and ended up being 9.
Yes, great drive from him.
So there's a lot of people. I think Max stole everyone's thunder today, but there's a lot of people that actually had some good races.
Yeah.
Except Daniel. We didn't see any of the Haas's. I didn't even know they were still driving in the end.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, they were
really slow. Like there are only cars on +1 lap with both of the Haas's.
Yeah.
And that sucks a little bit for him. And of course, I say only, but Latifi as well. But of course, he spun out to pit stop extra, so makes sense he didn't cover. But Latifi did enable Albon to get the points. In all fairness,
yeah, we talked about this during the race. It looked like who was it that Albon had behind him coming out of the pits? Was it Stroll?
I think it was Stroll, yeah.
And it looked like Albon kind of just hesitated a bit on the throttle coming out of that. It's quite a tight right turn coming out of the pits onto the to the bottom of Eau Rouge, and just looked like he kind of hesitated a little bit. Which, if he did do what I think he did, that was just like the most masterful of plays I've ever seen in Formula One, potentially, because he slowed Stroll down just enough for Latifi to then like slip in between them and block Stroll from passing him down the back straight.
And Latifi holding up some extra so he could actually just drive away with that speedy car.
Yeah.
Oh, no, kudos to Latifi, although it was, of course, bad race because of the spin. Honestly, that spin he caused himself, I think, as well. So it was.
Yeah, he lost control of the car, didn't he?
Yeah, and it was happy that not everyone took away because Max was just behind him, Ocon was behind him, and the only one that actually sort of took out was Bottas, but he didn't. He did that himself as well, so by trying to avoid it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Bottas would have remained in the race if it wasn't for Latifi just clipping his back wheel as he did. Because he kind of half went off track to avoid it, but he would have been able to, like, even if he'd gone into the gravel, he could have just carried on momentum. But it was that tap that kind of sent him into a half spin, which meant that he was like pretty much guaranteed to come to a stop. And if you come to a stop in that deep gravel, then it's game over.
Yeah. And we thought that the race would end in a snooze. Like Max driving away, Perez keeping a 10-second lead over Sainz. It ended, of course, with Max having a 17 seconds lead over Perez. Perez having a 9.8 second lead over Sainz.
Yeah.
And Russell just behind it.
A couple of seconds behind, yeah.
Yeah, I think 2.5 seconds. But behind that was, of course, Charles Leclerc being in fifth. And throughout the race, they were like, okay, we're just going to get fifth. That's the target. It's maximizing now. Let's do it, right? And I said to you, if actually Russell overtakes Sainz, they should surely just swap the Ferraris, right? You say they're not going to do it. Well, they didn't get a chance to do it because in lap 43, something happened, James. And I have to do this without trying to laugh, but it's also sad. It's funny. It's everything. It's like a dark comedy. They said, we're going to get you in, Leclerc. We're going to get you in, Charles, to go for the fastest lap. Was then said by Max, right?
Yeah.
He said, I really don't want to risk it on the radio. I don't want to risk it, guys. I don't want to risk it. And the moment he came at the bus stop chicane, he said, you know what? box, and he came in. Went for softs, went out. Of course, used soft because, hey, he used all soft yesterday. Came out. But what happened there? They forgot Alonso was behind him.
Yeah.
And Alonso surpassed Leclerc on the straight all the way up.
Yep.
So not only did he have to go for the fastest lap, but he also has to make up one more position while trying to do that in the last lap. Here comes the second part of it. He did overtake Alonso in the last lap, right? So that's very good of him. He was 9/10 short of the fastest lap. So Max still has the fastest lap. But while making the pit stop, James, he also sped in the pit lane.
Yeah.
And he got a 5 seconds penalty for that. Hands off giving the 5th place to Alonso back.
Yeah.
And he found out in an interview after the race with Etienne, I think. Like they said, hey, did you get you're now 6th, like what's 6th? And you saw his eyes. I feel so sorry for him because I think he's an honest to God good guy, right?
Yeah.
And although he's Max's biggest competitor, this you don't want to like.
Why was Ferrari making that risk when Alonso was in their pit stop window for a start?
He was.
Like, you get stuck behind him.
It was 18 seconds, and he had a 19.8 second lead. So
right, but if your pit stop is even just half a second slower,
you're done.
You're done. And if you get stuck behind that car going into what's supposed to be your fastest lap, then your lap's already compromised because it's going to slow you down into the first corner. It's going to slow you down going up Eau Rouge. Yeah, you'll get the benefit of DRS down the main straight, but potentially the damage is already done in those first set of corners. I don't know why they did it. Like we've seen this scenario crop up in the past, and I think for the most part it was usually with Red Bull, who might have been in 3rd and 4th position behind the Mercedes when, like 2020 or earlier, like when Red Bull weren't completely fighting for the championship, like getting the occasional win or whatever. And they wouldn't take the risk just for the fastest lap if they didn't have like a huge margin for error. And even if they had a margin for error, they wouldn't necessarily risk it, because what if you go in, make that pit stop, and you get a sticky nut, or you release the car and the wheel's not on properly, and you
you break a sensor and you're speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, like it's.
The silly thing about this is, last year it made sense. So Lewis and Max and the teammates just went always to get 1 point off the other team, right?
Yeah.
That's why they did it. And then it's sometimes worth the risk. You pit Bottas to get the fastest lap just to make sure Max doesn't get an accident.
That works, though, because it doesn't matter if Bottas has a problem with his pit stop. It doesn't matter that he doesn't manage to steal that point off Max, and maybe he doesn't even finish the race because ultimately Hamilton is still, finished wherever he's finishing and maximising his points.
And when Lewis is about to win and Max knows it, he went in when he's safe to get him one more point on his game. So
yeah, but only if he's got such a margin for error that, they can make a slow and safe stop, kind of what we were talking about earlier on, where,
but now there's actually they want to get 1 point off Max. In all fairness, as long as he isn't finishing in front of Max, it doesn't actually matter.
It doesn't matter. 1 point.
So why?
Is like nothing at this point, really. Like, it's just not worth the risk, especially a scenario like today. Even when you ignore the speeding penalty that he got that cost him 5th place, like it could have cost him 5th place just through any other error during.
What if Alonso just holds his ground?
Yeah. What if they collide going into? It's similar to Lewis and Alonso lap 1. Like, it's just I just don't see the point in putting your driver
Esteban is just behind
situation.
him, right? So Esteban finished 1.5 1.6 seconds behind Alonso.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and of course with the penalty, Leclerc's like straight in the middle. Mm-hmm. But it's not like they have the margin. Like if one mistake, and actually you can have.
Yeah, he's potentially finishing 7th instead. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't get it. They said it was a broken sensor, but even then, it doesn't matter. I don't think it's worth risk, especially when your driver says, "Guys, I really don't want to risk it."
Yeah.
What makes you think he's then able to have the confidence to make?
This goes back to what we were saying last week, that Leclerc really should be holding his ground on some of his thoughts and decisions.
Well, talking about that, democracy in the pit lane at Ferrari. They asked, do you want to have mediums? Do you want to go to the hards? And do you want to do now 5 laps more? Or do you want to come in already?
Oh, yeah.
Also, this is a question.
That was to Leclerc, wasn't it? Yeah, that was like, Leclerc, do you want to be the strategist as well here? Because we don't know what we want to do with you. You decide, and then when it goes wrong, it's your fault.
I was texting you. What are they doing? They're writing a book? What's happening here?
Why are you giving your driver that many options and giving them that much to process in the middle of a race? I mean, we know that the drivers can drive a car fast, and they can focus on other things as well. Like Norris during qualifying and stuff was like looking at the TVs to see who was behind him and stuff like that. And we know that's a fairly common thing for most of the drivers to do. Is like but you can't. The driver can't make a strategy decision because he doesn't know all the details that the engineers and the strategists have. For example, how well are the hard tyres even performing? Leclerc's probably thinking, well, you put me on hard tyres at the last race and that didn't work out, so I don't want hard tyres. But actually the hard tyres were pretty good here. And he might not have known that.
Because of the temperature, yeah.
But he might not have known that. You can't just say to him, like, we got mediums or hards, you pick. And
tell us if you can do 5 more laps or not. Yeah. We're not going to look at data anymore. You just have this.
Well, that I sort of get. If they're like thinking, can we stretch this out? And you ask the driver, do you think you can stretch this out? Like the driver can probably
question. Yeah. I like the fact that they put it in question. Like that's what they. So they didn't fire the engineer. They didn't like do anything else. They didn't talk with the strategist teams. They said, whenever you ask a question to a driver, make sure you finish with saying question.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, this is a question.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, I get it, but it was just, I feel bad. If I got sent a message with a picture with the Ferrari logo where the horse itself is actually running away from the shield.
Yeah.
Something outside the logo. I get it, right? Because it is. I don't think the car was specifically good this weekend. I did. Sainz fought like a lion. That is maximized everything. I think he had
100%. Yeah,
the car wasn't on par, but you should get. I think you should definitely get Leclerc in front of Russell this weekend as well. Should always be there.
Should be, yeah. I mean, if you look at what Max could do from only one position higher on the grid and finish 20 seconds in front of Perez in first place.
74 seconds in front of Perez, in front of Leclerc. 74 seconds.
I mean, okay, he had the bad luck, which caused him to have another pit stop. But
it's 20 seconds, not 18 seconds plus 11.
But Leclerc should have been finishing 4th or 3rd. Really, he needs to be performing at the same level as Max Verstappen if he wants to try and beat Max Verstappen, and he's not done that this weekend at least. It was a bit of a poor showing for him. I don't know if this is down to pressure, if it's down to the car.
If you get hit by bad luck time after time after time.
Well, there is the bad luck as well, and that's going to hit your confidence.
I mean, the sensor isn't that. I think that's also a mistake. You can look at it, right? So I think that's a mistake from his, but that's the pressure getting to him, I guess, as well. But it shows that he has got no confidence, honestly. And also, like in qualifying, Sainz outperformed him in qualifying as well. So I'm not there. He lost his second place now, so Perez is now second in the championship. Max is first. 93-point lead from Max to Perez.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's over because, hey, it's still Formula One.
No, it's over.
But it's over, right?
It's over. I mean, the only way Max loses this now is if he has
4 DNFs.
Yeah, like,
and
there's no way he's having 4 DNFs in 8 races, even if they have some sort of catastrophic overheating potential problem at hot races that might be.
He still got
up.
4.
Yeah, just slow down and finish ahead of the Mercs, and you still win the championship.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Is Red Bull as well champion done? No? Constructors? 475 for Red Bull Racing, 357 for Ferrari.
Yeah, that's
316 for Mercedes.
That's done between Red Bull and Ferrari. I would say that's done between Ferrari and Mercedes as well.
Yeah, you don't think Mercedes
can
catch up?
I mean, it depends how much of an outlier.
Nah, I think you're right.
This race was, but Mercedes didn't show that they have the potential to beat Ferrari enough in these last 8 races to kind of overcome that deficit. So
I think talk about the next race though, because we can't go on 2 hours in the show. We're all way over time. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it's good. Zandvoort this weekend. Max says in an interview after the race, I think Ferrari is actually favourite for Zandvoort, although I'm fine with 3rd place.
Maybe because one of Ferrari's strengths is in the corners, isn't it? And Zandvoort's quite a tight and twisty track, isn't it? I'm trying to remember it from last year.
Yeah, it is very much so.
Yeah, so maybe there is some truth to that. I still think Max Verstappen's going to win.
Your prediction for this weekend?
Max, Leclerc, Sainz.
I'll do something for the Ferrari fans that are listening, though. So I'm going to say Leclerc. Luck got to turn somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say 1-2 for Ferrari. And Max is going to end on the podium. And he wouldn't mind. Although he'd love to win his home Grand Prix, but I'm pretty sure, looking at today, that they might just win Monza as well. So
who might win Monza?
Red Bull. I don't see not winning Monza like this. So.
Yeah, I was going to say Red Bull seem odds on favourite for that as well now. I mean, it's like I said earlier.
Sort of hit and miss, but
like I said earlier, Spa's just a sample size of 1 when we're looking at like how they've come out of the summer break and the potential.
Yeah, but it is like Lewis Hamilton said, this is a kick to the teeth. 1.8 seconds.
Yeah,
it's 6 tenths to the Ferraris qualifying pace. When before the summer, the Ferraris were actually slightly better, I think, over 1 lap than the Red Bulls.
Yeah, but we don't know.
No matter how you say this, and Leclerc finishing 6th and not 5th as well, right?
Yeah,
it's just 6 days, and then you're back again. So,
but we don't know how much this technical directive has impacted them, and maybe that technical directive has impacted them specifically at Spa. We don't really know that yet. That's why it's only a sample size of 1. So
really interesting. I've written it down now. So he says Max.
I still
Sainz.
I still think that is. I'm sticking with that. That's my prediction.
I'll do the other way around. Leclerc, Sainz, and Max for this one.
Okay.
I was right about the winner. Everything else, Lewis making the podium, but it didn't quite make that.
He would have done as well, I think, if he hadn't wiped out with Alonso. I think he could have finished.
I don't know. The Alpines were really fast on the straight, so I don't know if that.
Yeah, but if you look at where Russell finished, right behind Sainz, I think Hamilton potentially could have been Sainz.
Fair enough.
But it's
no way of finding that out.
No, I was going to say it's all what ifs. So.
What is the thing we said last week? I said rain's coming, right? And I did say that Leclerc would crash. Leclerc didn't crash, so I was wrong there.
Yeah, you thought his engine.
What is the unlikely thing that's going to happen this weekend at Zandvoort?
Unlikely thing. I am going to say that the unlikely thing next weekend is that a Alpine is going to finish above a Mercedes without like a Mercedes not finishing. I mean, if both Mercedes and both Alpine finish, I think an Alpine is going to finish above a Mercedes.
Could very well be this track, honestly.
Yeah. It seems unlikely given that Mercedes are generally the third fastest car, but I don't know. I think, I think that might happen.
I'm sort of hoping for a wet race, if I'm honest. We got thunderstorms and stuff all going into the Netherlands on Saturday.
Right.
So that might be interesting. And we haven't seen Zandvoort in the rain yet, so that's going to be cool if that's happening. Unlikely thing happening is that there will be no tactical errors from Ferrari. A little bit of confidence. James,
that's very unlikely. Yeah.
Last but not least, did you ever think about what you're going to have for Formula One beverages? Or
I've been trying to think of something Dutch related for most of the week, and I just haven't got anything. So I'm just going to play it safe and say that I'll try and find a Dutch beer, I guess. Heineken would have to be.
I mean, it's not. Just say Heineken, you're done. Right?
Yeah.
I think of someone, but I'm going to stay away from the hamburgers. You know the hamburgers I said last week?
Yes, yeah.
I said Rosburger and the Hamilton burger.
Yeah.
Hamburger. So that's like I said with the Rosburger, it's the same. It's the same hamburger, but just served a little bit faster.
Yes, yeah.
And this is going to be my last hamburger or Mercedes joke. But this week I'm going to enforce the Force India burger, which is actually the same burger as we had last week, but then with a pink color on.
Oh, right, okay.
I did think a lot about this.
Was the Rosburger only faster than the hamburger because the hamburger was burnt the first time around?
Oh, that could have been that. But it's important, these are the identical burgers. Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
James, last week we didn't have a Twitter handle. Last week we didn't have a place we could call people to leave their comments, feedback, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But this week we have.
Yeah. I decided to make a Twitter for doing this podcast, so it's at F1 in Focus, James. All one word. It'll be in the description of wherever you're listening to this.
Brilliant. Before we say that you can find the podcast at F1 in Focus Pod, do we have to talk about what Alonso said to Lewis?
Nah, I don't think we need to cover that.
You'll find it probably else.
Hamilton's living rent-free in Alonso's head for the last...
Still though, right?
Like 15 years.
That's insane. Leclerc's official statement, by the way, before we end the show, is P9 in lap 1, then tear off in the brakes that causes front right brake overheating. I have to stop the takeoff, the tear off to the brakes. Going back to P5, took a 5 seconds penalty for being too quick in the pit lane because of a burn sensor caused by the first issue. It was a beautiful day, he says.
My God. Really the fact that sensor was burnt out was caused by the tear off as well is just wow. Just wow.
Group therapy for Ferrari fans.
Yeah.
And actually, it looks really sad. I feel really bad for him. I do not feel bad for, of course, people listening to the podcast. I want to say my personal thanks, or our personal thanks for giving your time into this podcast. And of course, this week we didn't make it within the hour either. We'll get better at that, but there was so much to discuss.
There was a lot this week, to be fair. Yeah.
And now I could say, you know what? We're not going to get a new manufacturer this weekend before Zandvoort, but who knows? It might actually still happen.
Maybe Porsche makes it official.
Exactly. And I can see that happen in Zandvoort with Red Bull as well, so who knows, right?
Yeah.
Wait till Friday. We'll bring out this podcast again next Monday. We'll be back. Drop us your questions, remarks, feedbacks at F1 Focus Pod on Twitter, and of course find us on all platforms. We're currently available. The more people listen to us, the more people like us, the more people actually give us a 5-star review, the more easily we can get added to more platforms. We've sent in a request. We'll be on, I think, Apple really shortly, if we aren't already at the time of this recording. But we want to get noticed more. But in the meanwhile, you can find us at least on Spotify and, of course, on YouTube. And you can find both the video feeds on it as well. Thank you very much for listening. James, see you next week.
Yeah, cheers. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.